Zoran is box boy.
It's an orange box.
Pardon?
It's an orange box.
Oh.
I get to do the first chuck. Excellent. I was literally cleaning my throat.
Oh, were you? All right, line your mat. There are three words that we have been bandying around a bit, and I am going to bring one of them to the foreground now, which is orientation. The other two, do you remember what they are? Little test. Ah, you love that word. Yeah, that's another one in the lexicon. There's three that go together. I don't know that we've actually clustered them together. Timing, orientation, and manipulation or action. I put them on the board. So these are real kind of basics in Feldenkrais. And so when I say we're going to bring one of them to the foreground, orientation, it doesn't mean that the others disappear, because they can't ever disappear. When we have an action in the world, so what Feldenkrais called a manipulation, that's the sort of the act of it. Within the act, there is always timing, and there is an orientation. And any of those three things can vary. So the same movement, the same action done with a different timing can change. So if I just, do this with this kind of timing, it's this, but if the timing is different, the action changes a bit, then it becomes hopping, for example. It's a bit of a stupid example, but anyway, timing can change something. So this movement, let's say it's done with this kind of timing. If I do that, then it's different, right? It's a different action. It's fanning. This is just, I don't know what it is, being a windscreen wiper. So timing would change, can change an action into something else, even though the action might stay the same. Yeah. And if I did that fast behind me, then that's quite a different thing with different orientation, right? Isn't it? That's odd. That's like I've just, in our family, I've just done a crunch. That's in the Coombs lexicon. That's the other one is a pump, which is a fart. Who knew? English family. Anyway, so orientation, timing, manipulation matter, and you can interchange them, any one of them or all three of them, to change, the outcome. So if we think about orientation, so you're all in slightly different orientations at the moment. So some of you are sitting, some of you are lying. There is a vague congruity that you're all oriented towards me, and what by convention we've decided is the front of the room. At the moment, that's the front of the room. Now that's just a convention that we agreed on. It's just a concept, because now I might decide that this is the front of the room. So what are you guys going to do about it? It's so nice. So at various polls, you had to change a lot. You had to change a bit. You didn't have to change very much at all, because you were in a different position in the room. So the orientation is always kind of, it's relative, and the reorienting is relative. So, and some of you just turned your head, so you didn't reorient your whole self, you just reoriented what? What's the kind of key thing that we orient first with? Eyes, teleceptors generally in the head, and you're now oriented to me sideways. And for some people, they actually don't hear very well when they're not oriented like horizon to horizon. It's harder for you to understand, not you personally, but it might be harder for people to understand when you're horizontal as opposed to lined up with my face. Interesting little thing. So there's this orientation, and it's always a convention, and it's plastic. It changes, depends on the situation. How comfortable are you with this being the front of the room now? If I move the whiteboard here, how much would I have to do to make this the front of the room for you in a more sort of fixed way. So is the front of the room so solely contingent on me? Oh, what power! I can feel the surge. My voice. Yeah, it doesn't last, does it? And then, you know, the orientation, if we use the room as the orientation force, so what would it, is this enough? This is now the front of the room. So how quickly do you change your orientation? So physically you change it. Is your internal experience of the front of the room now here? Is that half and half? You feel a little bit disoriented? It's fine, but you're waiting for me to go back. Yeah, see? So this is really good. So Narian's got another function in mind that you guys might not know about. He's got a function in mind about the camera, and this is slightly perturbing for him because something isn't conforming. You know, the organisation of the room isn't flexible enough for me to keep messing around with orientation like this. But now we've found some flexibility in the system. Okay, so how flexible is a system to change its orientation? Now you're all able to change your orientations. If you are all in fixed wheelchairs and required somebody to turn, and you couldn't propel the wheelchair yourself, and I kept on changing orientation like this, it would be really awkward, right? Because you're not able, you're not free. You have to move because you two just don't exist now. You know, because I'm not orienting to you. And that's okay. Do you feel left out? Sorry? Can you hear a voice somewhere? Yes. So you're a bit like Narian. You're sort of, okay, I can deal with it for now, but it better be temperate. Yeah. You're compensating, actually. Yeah. If you're accommodating, you'd actually change more. But it's not judgment. It's just, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. And that for you chose to be a distance from the front of the room. So when I flipped it, your choice is now different. You don't have a choice. Yeah, I've reversed your choice. Yeah. That's right. Well, I mean, huh? No, of course not. It's separate. Jenny's being naughty, but she's being accurate, actually. So that's one element of orientation, and we use that a lot, and it's good to be challenged around that. Now, when we're teaching ATM, to be consistent, I mean, Zoran has set up some of the lessons he's taught. He's had to set up very carefully because he's used the orientation of the room, so the external environment, as the cue for orientation. So the front of the room and the back of the room, and he established that as an agreed set of conditions. But it's only an agreed thing. It's, you know, it's like we've all agreed what orange means. It's an agreement. It's just it's not set in concrete. It's just a tacit agreement. When we're teaching ATM, I'm just going to walk back over here because that makes Narian breathe more easily. His diaphragm was slightly shorter than it needed to be. And I don't know whether you've actually heard, you've heard this because you've kind of followed the instructions, or whether you've heard it. Mostly in ATM, we give the instructions where the orientation is internal. It's relative to you as an individual. So if you think now, if everybody's sitting, except for you, this is fine because you'll just do the opposite, not the opposite. Relative to you, if we're orienting a movement and you're the reference point, not the room, what's above your head? Yeah, so for Nathan, it's there. And for Kevin, whose head is sort of on the diagonal, above your head is, yeah, a corner, you know, a corner somewhere. Sorry? Yeah, yep. So above you, when you're the reference, is going to be different according to what orientation you're in. Yes. Yeah, we could use gravity as the orientation factor for language, but then we'll have to agree. So when, you know, and this, we'll talk a lot more about this later when you start teaching little ATM kind of things, is you have to make sure that your audience and you are congruent with what you're orienting to. So when Zoran was using the room as the orientation thing, then he sets that up. If I taught something yesterday where, I don't know if you noticed or not, but I was very clear that you were orienting relative to you. And that's more the default in Feldenkrais, that you're orienting to you. So lie on your back. Everybody lie on your back. Lie on your own back, not on somebody else's back, because that's a different orientation. So now, for all of you, and Zoran would have said this in the lesson, if you lift your arm above your head, go ahead. Yeah. Ah, okay. So look around the room, and there's a vacillation, as Zoran said. All right. So above your head. So some people have got it above their face. So that's actually orienting to the room. If you orient to the top of your head, above your head, in lying, in the Feldenkrais kind of vernacular, so you're above your face, Kwan. Yeah. Because very clearly, go and sit up. Sit up, please. Put your hand above your head now. There's no vacillation. Well, you're being naughty. Yeah. So nobody would go like this to say above your head and sitting. Yet some people did this in lying, right? Because you're not sure about what you're orienting to. Are you orienting to the room or you're orienting to yourself? So you have to be really careful when you're teaching. Above your head, reference to you, this is above my head. Whether I'm lying or sitting, or so go onto all fours, so stand on all fours and put the top of your head on the floor. If this is not comfortable, don't do it. Now put your hand above your head, So it's well, it's hard because you'd have to do something, right? You'd have to lift, above your head is actually underneath your head. Yeah. So then you'd have to be careful about that instruction, but underneath is okay because it's still relative to you. Now, if you just get out of that position, lie on your back. So it's always relative to you. What's above your head? And it's kind of in brackets, the top of your head. Yeah. Above your face. Yeah. Behind. Yeah. Yep. So put your hands behind your head. That's no big deal there. It's just when you had your top of your head on the ground, you kind of freaked out. How do I get on the top of my head? Can you feel that? It's actually the same thing. You had to lift your head to put your hands there, but you were somehow reluctant to do it when the top of your head was on the ground. It didn't make sense, did it? Sorry, I didn't. But okay, you're right. Take your hands away. Put your hands behind your head. Behind. So let's pretend that the previous thing didn't happen, and I was accurate from the start. So behind your head, that sort of is culturally acceptable. Nobody had any problem. Whereas when you're at the top of your head, it was lying on the floor, and I said, put your hands above your head, on top of your head. Maybe if I'd said, put your hands on top of your head. So, as our friend Laurie Anderson sings, language is a virus. That's a blast from the past. Language does keeps mutating. Exactly, it's a virus, growing, expanding bits of it.
The more the concepts we begin to create, like language,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can be, definitely are. I'll repeat it. Concepts are culturally bound. Full stop. Zoran.
Actually, Anna just said it.
Okay.
Joanne, my wife, was an anthropologist in human movement. And as an anthropologist, whenever she goes into a particular culture, she has to find out how they reference space, because every culture references space differently. And when you said, Susan, convention, that's exactly what it is. So getting to know the culture means getting to know how they conceive of the world. So that's what we're doing here.
So you could say culture is convention. It's an agreed convention. What we consider, you know, how we consider things, how we perceive things, being culturally bound is we agree on a convention. Go again.
And then one extra thing happens. The convention becomes so embodied that you don't question what the convention is.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And you can feel that, right? That's when you were vacillating, because we were challenging a convention, challenging your convention, your interpretation of a convention. You're saying it's universal? No. Good, yeah.
Okay.
Hang on, sorry.
So
we'll just deal with one thing at a time.
So here's the response to this. So, you know, in different cultures, I'm following up on your values comment. In different cultures, when they talk about what's good and what's bad, they often couch that language in up and down. Yeah? More is up. Yeah? That's good. Good is up, bad is down. God is up, devil's down. Can you see how these directions are really linked to the values of the culture? Future is forward, past is back. However, in some cultures, past is forward because you can remember the past, and that's in your visual field, and future is behind. So can you see that orientations become embedded in culture, and then that becomes a value, and so you know you belong to that culture. And here, you're practicing to be anthropologists of movement. Oh, what are my values? How do I reference space? How do I understand how I move? It's great. It's wonderful. Sorry.
That's all right. No, that's good. So your internal sense of self has directions, and you all have agreed tacitly that the front of you is the thing that orients to what you're paying attention to. So all set up and face what we're still calling the back wall. We'll go back to calling it the back wall. And I'll keep talking with you. And how do you feel about not having your face towards me? So your back is oriented to me. And you don't, and Julie doesn't like it because she's a teacher. Okay, yeah, you'd feel rude. Yeah. So couple of colleagues and I used to teach a neuroscience grad dip for teachers, and we were playing around with this idea of orientation a lot, and a few other concepts, and the students had to do a project. So one of the teachers, so smart, she really challenged this idea of, you know, she's a JP, she's a junior primary teacher, and there is a very clear protocol for listening for junior primary kids. You sit on the floor, your hands are still, your mouth is quiet, eyes front. Right, now you could say that's just prescriptive and horrible and blah, blah. So she thought, right, we'll really deconstruct this. So she set up a series of experiments where there's a set of books, reading books, comprehension books, and they're standardized. And you read the book to the children, and then they do a little comprehension test afterwards. So quite standardized. So she had this set of books. So she standardized the input, if you like. And the output was the comprehension test. And then the condition that she varied. So one time she read the story where the kids had to do all of those three things. They had to sit up, orient to her, eyes front, hands still, speech silent. Then in the next one, they didn't have to look at her, so they didn't have to be eyes front. They could be in any position that they wanted. And then in another condition, they didn't have to have their hands still. She gave them plasticine to play with, so they could orient to that and to her voice. So, you know, it's getting a bit murky. You can see the conditions are kind of messing up. And then the final condition, they could do whatever they liked. So there was no rules. And each time she tested their comprehension. And interestingly enough, now this will tell me whether you're anarchists or not. What do you think? What was the condition that produced the best comprehension? Yeah, well, see, Jane's an anarchist. She's just given herself away. Slightly depends on the child, but let's say we've got a big enough sample that we get the sort of average response that's a reliable average. We can be individualistic, I know, but just, yeah. Sorry? Which one was the second one? Sorry. Fiddling with their hands. But, okay. It was equal. The eyes front, hands quiet, speech quiet, and the fiddling, having the plasticine to fiddle with, but still sitting towards her, were equally good. But the very small SD, let's just say. Do I know about multiple intelligences? The theory? So you know I'm going to go after you, don't you? It's that they learn this or this or this that I'll go after you about. Primarily, they may have a preference. Sure, we have preferences. We have preferences. Yeah. So you're right, and that tells me something about Julie, that Julie orients to the individual. And this is classic. I mean, clinicians do too. So if I'm teaching a group of population health people, they orient to the group norm. And they'll make big statements about the health of a population. What? Yes, okay. Sorry. That's okay. I was just wondering why they were doing all this semaphore up the end, and it's because Alison's got the box and she's waiting patiently, and she's good at waiting. She's learnt patience. She's an adult. So the orienting to a group versus an individual is an interesting orientation. Do you think about the exception? Do you think about the group? So I work with population health people, and they are so group oriented that they'll talk about the health of a community based on a postcode. And I'll immediately go, well, so I live in the 5,000 postcode in Adelaide. And they'll say, well, you know, they can describe the health of that postcode area. And I go, well, that's bullshit, because there's me, you know, and I live in a house that's kind of like this, and I, you know, drive a car like that. But the people across the road drive a Mercedes compressor, so they're clearly different people. And then, of course, you know, there's a little tribe of wanderers who live in the car park next to me who don't even have a car or a house or anything. So how can you talk about the house at the health of a population at a postcode level? But of course they can. It's just one way of describing something. So I immediately did what you did, and I go to the individual and say, oh, you can't collapse all of us individuals into a group. Well, yes, you can, and yes, you can't. That's just the difference. So just notice the difference. And then when you say, well, there are these kinds of learners and those kinds of learners, and it's exclusive and they're separate groups, then I would jump to the difference, go, actually, are they? No, not particularly. You know, we have preferences, we have tendencies, we have habits. Our job here is to challenge the habit. So if you think, Julie, you say to me, oh, I'm a very visual learner, I will challenge you and make you shut your eyes and learn with your eyes shut. Oh, that sounds familiar strategy, doesn't it? Yes, yeah. So that's that. So that's dealt with. So now Alison's been waiting patiently and she will get her reward. And she's probably forgotten.
Well, yeah, no, I haven't quite forgotten, but it's a bit banal now, actually, because it was, and Julie may well have asked it, because I couldn't hear, which was simply to ask whether there was a difference in that experiment between boys and girls, just because of the stillness stuff. But
yeah,
that was it.
It's a good, that would be a good sub-study, wouldn't it? So again, you know, then you start thinking of all these sorts of different variations on what might change that. There's a rough rule around when you start looking at gender differences and those sorts of things, and that's the two bell curves overlap. And actually the majority is still the same, but there'll be more boys who can't sit still, slightly more girls who can sit still, but actually the majority of boys and girls are the same. And that sort of holds true for most gender distinctions, sex distinctions. All right, any other, I'm getting a bit rambly, but yeah, you've got the box.
I was thinking, what was I thinking? Class always gets me disoriented. The fact that it was the first time they had allowed the kids to do this would
make a difference, yeah.
As well,
yeah.
They would be like, oh, what's everyone else doing? Or,
yeah,
or
novelty,
even, Or even the first time it's like the effort of having to keep still and face forward and looking. Actually, a lot of they're not familiar with it.
They were familiar with sitting still, yeah. So they're like year 2 or something. You know, they'd had a year of not wriggling. Yeah. So you're right. There's a practice effect that could confound that. So you're all scientists. You'll start thinking about how you would refine that experiment, start probing differences. And you can all start to see, that's my bias, you know, starting to see things about the tension between, you know, when you start making comments about the group versus the individual. And this is a tension that in some ways we explore a lot in here, where you're having the individual experience, and then we're encouraging you to talk as a group to get the group experience, so that you start understanding the variation and the words that we've been using a fair bit this week, which are the similarities and the differences, and how you do you like it when everybody's the same? Do you like it when everybody's different? Do you like a bit of both? What do you think? I'm completely gone off topic. Sure. Are you getting restless, Narian? Oh, sure. No, that's right. Yeah. So, okay, you're right. So similarities and differences. Get back to orientation. Lie on your front.
May I ask the last question, please?
The last question.
Before lying down?
Oh, okay.
Now, what I find fascinating is why some people, which part of ourself can affect somebody who is open to all the possibilities before they select their choices, or they keep changing their choices. And some are just so limited in receiving choices, possibilities first. They just get stuck to one habit and they stick to that, and they're just not open to varieties, you know. So what causes that behavior changes?
We don't know. I mean, we know why people form habits up to a point. It's efficient. It's really efficient to have a habit because then I don't have to think consciously about it. So it's really efficient that the pattern of the way we walk is quite habitual, because then I can walk and talk at the same time, because then I can use more conscious parts of my brain to talk, and the more subconscious parts that, you know, that really good at pressing the button, doing the habit, can walk. So habits are not an evil thing. They're a force for good and a force for evil. Why do some people limit their habits? $64 million question, isn't it? What? Sorry? Partly, but could be a choice. I mean, it's people choose, make a decision to limit. So let's leave that question, because it's a big question. Right?
So say you clean your house really clean. Every day you must clean. Every hour you must clean. Suddenly there's earthquake. Oh my God, your whole house collapse. So that will make you go crazy, right? Because it changes. It's too vast.
My house wasn't clean.
Yeah. Yeah. So now the conversation is going to adaptation, which is another question. So lie on your front.